How's it going, everybody? Today we're going to be doing my first impressions of Ashes of Creation PvP now that we're in Phase 2. I did do PvP in Phase 1, but it was a little bit silly with the legendary items. People were quite literally one-shotting each other once they got the gear, and now that's been nerfed, and I wanted to do an updated first impressions video. And yeah, been having a lot of fun overall. I will say that is the number one thing I have to say is that for an alpha game, the PvP combat is very fun. It's very fluid. The class design is good. Yes, there are some tuning things I would like to see changed, some pacing things I would like to see changed, but from like a 10,000 foot view, I think it's really, really good, especially with how early it is. My guild did scrimmages yesterday. We did 40v40 scrimmages, and I cannot stress to you how well this ran. We had 40 people versus 40 people in a clump fighting each other, and the server not only held up, there was not input lag. At least I was not getting any input lag. Yeah, there was some frame rate lag here and there, but the game ran phenomenally well. And some of my guildmates that have some higher end cards that take advantage of like DLSS and the other crazy NVIDIA stuff they've got going on, their performance was immaculate. Like it's really incredible how well this game does in large scale PvP this early. And that's the thing I want to stress. You know, video game optimization generally does not happen until closer to release as they finalize the systems and the UI and things like that. So for it to run this well this early is incredibly impressive. Yes, they are sort of cheating a little bit with the render distance, but the render distance is still not that bad considering we had 80 people clumped together. And the fact that this is the worst it's ever going to be is really, really impressive. So huge W when it comes to the technical aspect. It's really impressive. Now let's talk about the combat. Overall, I think Ashes of Creation has a fantastic combat system for PvP. The only issue I have with it right now is that the time to kill is just too fast. Now, some of you may be watching these clips and saying, oh, it doesn't look that fast, but keep in mind a lot of these clips are small scale PvP, and I am in pretty potato gear, as well as a lot of the opponents I'm fighting are also in pretty potato gear. And just because, you know, most people are hitting level 25, myself included. But the problem is that goes completely out the window once higher level gear gets involved. Once people start wearing crafted gear and start enchanting their gear, the time to kill just gets insanely fast. To where if you are a little bit under geared, you just get blown the hell up. And that would be not so much of an issue, right? Because like, oh, you know, once I get the gear, it'll be a lot more fair. Yes, it will be more fair, but the problem is that the time to kill, from what I can tell, just gets faster and faster and faster as people get geared. It doesn't seem like the defensive stats are keeping up with the offensive stats, and the problem with the fast time to kill is that it doesn't leave a lot of room for skill expression. This is not a game like Valorant, where there's headshots and like a whole aiming mechanic. This is an MMORPG where a lot of the skills are tab target. You need a slower time to kill if you want the better players to win. And not only that, not only is the skill expression severely hampered, the combat system is worse when it's this fast, because Ashes of Creation has a layering system where things combo off of each other and effects layer on top of each other. And there's a lot of really cool synergies that are in this game from the class design perspective. But the problem is that all goes out the window when everybody's just getting blown up in 2 seconds. It's really, really silly. The extremely fast time to kill has led to a very dominant ranged meta, because when the time to kill is this fast, the inherent advantage of playing a ranged character is much larger. Why play a fighter when you're just going to charge in and die when you can just safely DPS and poke from range on a mage or a ranger? And you're just, it's a lot safer, it's a lot easier to get value out of your kit when you're at range. Whereas with fighter, you have to play so defensively and so scared, because when you fully commit and charge in, you better be safe. Like, you better be sure, because if you're not, you're dead. There is no wiggle room. And the thing with fighter in particular in this game is that fighters are no tankier than mages due to the way the armor system works. It's not like a canonical warrior where generally the warriors can take a hit better than a mage can. Not in this game. With the way the armor system works, mages and fighters are the same durability. Fighters have a blood fusion, which is a 45-second cooldown that is a lifesteal ability that it relies on uptime, which, again, not something that you generally have when you are getting shit on in a snare, in a root, in a disarm, in a silence. Blood Fusion, it's not a great defensive cooldown, which is, again, why you don't see that many fighters. It can be, you can have some highlight reel moments, but it's a defensive cooldown that relies on melee uptime and the opponent not having shields because you don't get lifesteal off the shields. So, it's just a tricky situation right now to be a melee with the time to kill. And not only the time to kill, the game has a lot of roots and disarms and AoE CC to where when you charge in, you just get locked down completely and you can't really do anything. But more importantly, you can't escape. The general play style that you would want to go for as a fighter with this kind of time to kill would be, get in, do your damage, get out. Well, the problem is you get in and then you get rooted, disarmed, and you just can't do anything. And your CC break is a long cooldown that also requires momentum. So it's not a great look for fighters in large scale PvP. While I personally think the fighter is a ton of fun and I love the class fantasy and design, I can't help but think that it's just the worst class in the game. In most contexts, I feel like fighter is just weaker than the other options in the game. And some of you may be saying, oh, I know XYZ plays a fighter and he's super good. Yeah, he is good. He is a good player who would probably be doing better on a different class. It seems like the fighter right now is just a lot more work for a lot less results. And that is why you see the representation the way it is. That's why you just don't see that many fighters. That's why you don't really see that many tanks either. You see more tanks because they're not quite as dire. At least they are, needed. Whereas the fighters, why do you need a fighter? Do you ever need one? Not really. Now, I'm sure some of you guys are rushing to the comments section right now saying, oh, Zyback just wants his class buffed. He just wants to be OP. No, I don't want any fighter buffs. In fact, I want everyone, including fighters, to get nerfed. I would love to see the meta of this game if players did 50% less damage to other players. Just have a global status effect where, as a player, you do 50% less damage to other players. I think that change alone would make fighters considerably better just because the fighter kit is going to do better in a slower time to kill environment just due to the nature of the class mechanics. But also, I just think the game would be more fun if players had more time to actually fight. Now, this might make healing too strong, but I think right now we're so skewed in favor of just these one-shot, crazy TTK that I think most people would rather err on the side of, oh, this fight was kind of a little long, rather than just getting blown up. Now let's talk about class balance generally. This is just going to be my overall thoughts on each class right now. And in my opinion, the best class in the game is Bard. Right now, they have crazy mobility, crazy CC, the best group utility in the game, and for some reason, they also have crazy damage. I'm not sure if this damage is due to like weird scaling and gear discrepancy or what it is, but it seems like Bard really does have it all right now. They are very powerful in the hands of a good player. Next up, we have Cleric. And to be honest, it's kind of hard to judge whether Cleric is balanced or OP or where it really stands because it's the only healer and you just need them. If anything, this just goes to show you how good Bard is. You have to have Clerics, but Bard is still the best class in the game. Like that's just a crazy statement. Next up, we have Mages, and Mages are the undisputed kings of damage. They are easily the best damage dealer in the game. The best range class in the game. They have crazy AoE damage, crazy single target damage, good mobility, snares. They are just a solid class that, if we're being honest, is pretty easy to get value out of, which is why 60% of the game is Mages. Mages are just cracked. Next up, we have Tanks. Tank, in my opinion, is probably the most balanced class in the game. They can be really good in a lot of scenarios. They can be a threat with damage. They can be a threat with CC. They have great group utility. But more importantly, they're not extremely annoying to play against. Very rarely are you playing against a tank just being annoyed. I don't know. Some of the other classes have some mechanics. And again, maybe this comes back down to time to kill, whereas tanks generally aren't going to be doing like crazy damage to you for the most part, unless there's crazy like gear discrepancy or something. But tank, in my opinion, overall, I think it's a pretty well-balanced class, at least from what I can tell. Next up, we have Rangers, and I believe Rangers are also a pretty well-balanced class. A lot of people think Rangers are terrible. Rangers aren't bad. They're just not mages. Mages are just so absurdly broken that it makes Rangers seem bad because they're not mages. Rangers, in my opinion, another class where they have, some good utility, but also they're not incredibly annoying to play against, which I think is kind of important when it comes to class balance. And fighters. Fighters are okay-ish in small-scale PvP. You can absolutely have some highlight reel moments, as you guys have seen from my YouTube shorts and some of my previous videos. However, the problem with the fighter is that you constantly feel like you're building a house of cards, and if the wind blows and things go wrong, you're pretty screwed. You do have two pretty solid gap closers, but the problem with the fighter is the micro CC, the bunny hopping, and the general movement tech you can do in this game will mean that you can get easily clowned on by somebody that knows what they're doing. If you're facing a ranged player, or even just anybody that knows how to dance around in the right way, that's the best way I can describe it, you are going to get clowned on with the current TTK and mechanics in the game right now. Because with bunny hopping, with some of the fancy things you can do with momentum on a ranged kit, it's kind of hilarious how easy it is to clown on fighters. And those two, your blitz and your leap don't really matter in that context, because the movement is so herky-jerky. You don't have that fluidity that ranged people can abuse with their kiting. And I'm sure some of you guys noticed this while you were leveling, how extremely powerful kiting is in this game, with things like sprinting and bunny hopping backwards, and how you maintain your full momentum while you're casting and shooting off spells. It's pretty crazy what you can do with the kiting. And then that compounds with the fighter not being like a warrior in WoW, where you don't have like a hamstring that has 100% uptime. Your slow is only 25%. And it's not relatively low uptime, and it DRs, so you don't have a consistent slow, and you just have these mages that are just Tokyo drifting around everywhere, and it's super obnoxious right now. Maybe they'll do something with the lunging strike skill, or lunging assault, whatever it's called, to shore that up. But even tanks have this issue with melee uptime. Tanks don't feel it quite as bad, because they at least have some defensive cooldowns that aren't useless and rely on uptime like Blood Fusion does. So it's not quite as bad for them, because they do have a grip, they do have the charge, but even they are going to have melee uptime issues against somebody that knows how to do all the movement tech. So it'll be interesting to see how they address that. If they change the way snares work, maybe that would probably be the easiest thing, is just to change the snare mechanics for maybe fighter and melee classes in particular. I don't know. The best way I can sum up Ashes of Creation's PvP balance is that you have mages, clerics, and bards, and then you have everyone else. There's definitely first-class citizens and second-class citizens. But the thing of it is that I genuinely think that there doesn't need to be any specific changes made to any classes yet. But I would like to see them globally nerf player damage across all classes and just see how that plays out. I think with a slower time to kill, a lot of these problems will be less of problems. A lot of this crazy movement tech won't be as powerful, because eventually you run out of dodge rolls and stamina. And with the TTK being longer, you just have more of an opportunity to outplay some of these weird oddities, and these things become just less effective. So my biggest issue with the game is definitely the time to kill. However, I do have to mention the game is extremely gear dependent right now. And I want to emphasize right now. This is a very special moment where a lot of the people that rush to level 25 do have an extreme advantage over the medium player. The medium player right now is probably in their upper 20s. It just hit 25. And there is a huge delta between the Sweat Lords and them in terms of player power right now. These guys that have the crafted gear and the Carfin gear that's enchanted, especially some of the people that did some of the dubious things to get to that point, which we'll see on the band wave coming up, there is a huge difference in gear right now. But again, that will slowly erode over time. And not only will that slowly erode, the gear in Ashes of Creation is not BOP, meaning you're going to be getting hand-me-down gear. Your gear will get better, and more importantly, the marketplace is going to start to come online. People are going to start selling their crafted gear. At the current moment of recording this video, everything is still super secret squirrel. Every guild is crafting in-house. Nobody's selling anything of value. Eventually, as time goes on, as the weeks go on, the gear advantage will get less and less and less. Now, I am still worried about the TTK being insanely fast at these gear levels, but at least people won't have the crazy stat advantage they have over you. But trust me, if you're watching this video and you've done PvP, you know some of these guys have the most insane gear, and you absolutely do not stand a chance, but you just sort of have to shrug that off because, yeah, it's a little wild right now between the haves and the have-nots, but eventually the universe will correct itself. But overall, I'm having a lot of fun with the game. I'm very optimistic for the future of the game. The performance is fantastic. The combat design overall is pretty fantastic. I don't know. I'm having a lot of fun. Despite all of this, I'm having a lot of fun, and I think that just a few, really just numbers tuning really would make things dramatically more fun. So that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Have a good one.